Hey everyone, I am so excited to be making this video today because I'm here to show you something that I have loved in Forza Horizon for ages. And now it's here in Motorsport. I am, of course, talking about Sappy's Motorsport Plus, an approved telemetry overlay for Forza Motorsport that is super customizable, requires no modifying of the game files, and only takes a few minutes to set up. Now, a lot of Horizon folks are probably familiar with Sappy's previous work on Horizon Plus, which I covered about a year ago, but I'm guessing there are a lot of fresh faces here in this video. So let's go ahead and give an overview of what Motorsport Plus can do, and then we'll jump into an install and customization guide for everyone so that you can all get this up and running on your own PCs. So we've got 5 modules to cover today, and let's start with that wonderful delta display in the top center. This shows my last lap time, as well as my delta against my best lap in the session, or in other words, how far ahead or behind I am from my best lap time at any given moment. Motorsport currently has some ways to sort of show this. I do think the sector timing stuff is pretty cool, and you do get split times that pop up at set points around the course, but when learning tracks in a lot of corners, you end up kind of running blind, and it can be hard to experiment with different lines through a corner without having a delta to see if you're ahead or behind your best time. I think for sim racing regulars, I don't need to explain the value of a lap delta, but for those newer to this space, I really cannot overstate how helpful this can be. And this, along with everything else by the way, is fully configurable and can be resized, customized, and moved anywhere on screen. And with that, let's show off the other major outstanding element here, the tuning panel that shows us top speed achieved during the session, an accelerometer and G-force readout, and a suspension model for measuring spring compression. This is another great tool that you might not need during a race, but is something that's nice for tuning and testing by complementing the in-game telemetry and bringing some of those stats out onto the main display. For example, as you can see here, I love having this on while I'm testing cornering load and max speeds at Eagle Rock. This is a great way to help figure out how much downforce to run and where to make suspension adjustments to get more cornering grip without hurting high-speed acceleration and top speeds. And this is all made so much easier with the tuning panel. Now, I love showing off these next overlay elements because you might not have even noticed them. Let's look at the bottom right, where we can see disguised into the vanilla UI are 3 more overlays: a tire extension, input overlay on the tach, and a boost gauge. Starting on the left with the tire overlay, this is basically another vanilla telemetry readout that's been brought into the main race HUD and shows tire load. When used in combination with the vanilla temperature and wear readout, this gives you some great information on whether or not you're cooking your tires coming into corners or getting wheel spin on exits. Then over inside the vanilla tach and speedo, we've got these super slick input readouts for steering, clutch, and handbrake. These complement the vanilla brake and gas readouts perfectly, and I love having these up as an alternative to a full controller overlay when I'm making content, because this gives pretty much the same information. You know, if you want to see if I'm tapping the handbrake to get more rotation, or what my steering input looks like through a corner, this is a great, sleek way to have that info on display while not overly cluttering the screen. And finally, this one's always fun, around the outside edge of the tach, we've got a boost gauge that, like any real boost gauge, also reads vacuum pressure. Obviously, boost gauges are just neat as is, but do have some value here in Motorsport for keeping an eye on when to shift and making sure you aren't killing boost pressure between gears. Or it could help with upgrade selection and driving if you're maybe struggling with a really aggressive power band once boost kicks in. And that is everything Motorsport Plus has to offer in this current release. Now, before we get to the install guide, I've got just a couple of notes and disclaimers to mention here. First, this is just the 1.0 release, and if Horizon Plus is anything to go by, then we can expect to see more modules getting added in the future. So be sure to keep an eye out in the Forza Discord for possible future updates. And now for a bit of bad news, As it stands currently, doing things like rewinding or pausing the game kind of bugs out a couple of the overlays and will reset your peak speed data as well as messing with your delta readout for the following lap. Hopefully, Turn 10 can fix this with their data out sometime in the near future. And with that, let's talk about how to get this installed. Luckily, it's a pretty simple process. The first thing we'll need is a program called SimHub. This is a great piece of software that lets us plug into Motorsport's data out feature and then build custom overlays with that information. It's free to download and use, but there is also a pay what you want license that takes off the 10 FPS overlay limit and adds a couple of other small QOL features. I would definitely recommend downloading and using the free version to start, and then if you really like using it, toss them a few bucks to unlock that license and get the extra features. And before we move on, quick note about the frame rate unlock. In some cases, the paid 60 FPS mode might not play nice with certain G-Sync monitors or refresh rates, and some people end up having to do something like locking their refresh rate or turning on in-game V-Sync in order to get the overlays to work at 60 FPS. I've got this running on my 240Hz Odyssey G9 with in-game V-Sync on. And I'm bringing this up just because I want to be super clear before anyone spends money that there's a chance you might have to change some monitor or game settings to get that 60 FPS overlay to work. With that though, we've got SimHub downloaded now and installed, and you should be on at least version 9.1, which added support for the new Forza Motorsport. Now let's head over to Sappy's GitHub page, which is hosted here in the Forza-Discord, and grab Motorsport Plus version 1.0. This is going to download a zipped folder containing the patch notes, a README with a condensed install guide and overview of features, the overlay modules, and a folder containing the module layouts for different resolutions. The first thing we'll do is just double click on all of these modules, which should open a pop-up in SimHub to add it to your library. Do this with every module in the folder, and if this is your first time using SimHub or Sappy's overlays, you're going to likely also have a checkbox to install fonts. Make sure you have that checked as well. Next up, we just need to head over to our install location for SimHub, then take this overlay layouts folder here and drag it in. Perfect, everything in SimHub should be just about ready to go, and now let's head in game and make sure Motorsport is exporting the data for SimHub to use. Go to the Gameplay and HUD tab of your game's settings, scroll to the bottom, and turn on Data Out. Then for the IP address, type 127.0.0.1. Don't worry, you aren't sending data anywhere. This IP is just a universal loopback for your local PC. Next, for the data out IP port, put in 8000. And finally, for the packet format, switch to CarDash. And there you have it. Motorsport Plus is basically ready to use. Head back to SimHub, go to the Dash Studio, and then the Overlay tab, and here we'll be able to see the various overlay layouts, and below that all the individual modules. You can choose to manually load an overlay or set it to auto load when you boot the game. And as a quick note here, if there isn't already a saved overlay for your monitor's resolution, don't worry, just load any existing one and I'll cover how to set everything up in a moment. Alright, so now you can reboot Motorsport and you should see SimHub switch over to this overlay control window. We'll get back to this. To make sure everything's working, just get loaded into a race. Motorsport Plus should only display while your car is on track, so it won't be loaded in during most menus. And here we are. If you want, you can be done right here. But of course, a lot of the beauty of this overlay is in its customizability. So if we tab back to SimHub's overlay control, we can click Edit Layout. Then in this main window, we can remove or add any modules that we want, and we can move the modules around the screen and resize them to our liking. Now, especially for people with currently non-supported resolutions or ultra-wide monitors, it can be a total pain to line up these modules where you want, because Motorsport auto pauses whenever it isn't in focus. So I found that it's easiest for me to just take a screenshot of the game, set it as my wallpaper, and then configure the layout from there. And as another note, the tire overlay is meant to kind of surround the vanilla overlay, but the vanilla overlay moves depending on whether or not you can swap tire compounds in a race. So if you want, you could maybe throw this off to the side or something so that you don't need to swap layouts between certain races. And there is a chance Motorsport Plus might be able to update with the ability to detect this and move it on its own. With that said, you can build out any custom overlay you want in order to switch between them when needed. Build any layout you want by clicking New Overlay Layout, adding and placing whatever modules you need, and then clicking Save. And you can also assign a hotkey to show or hide the overlay. Head to SimHub's settings, tab over to plugins, and enable keyboard input. Then back in the overlay control window, click to configure toggle overlays visibility. Then type in whatever key combo you want, and that'll be used to show or hide your overlay. This even works through controller input on certain wheels. So as you can see, SimHub is a very powerful tool depending how you use it. And before we wrap up for the day, I want to give you all a quick primer on how to even further customize these overlays. Let's say you don't need both kilometers and miles per hour up on the tuning panel. Well, just go to SimHub's Dash Studio again, find the tuning panel, and click More to open the editing dashboard. Now, I'm American, so I just need the freedom units. I'm going to click on the readout I don't need, delete it, and then drag the miles per hour readout down to take its place. And I'll make sure to save it before closing. Now, maybe I want some different colors for my boost gauge. I'll open up the editor for this one, use the hierarchy tree to find the element I want to change, scroll to find its color here, and change it to, let's say, blue. And then maybe I want this boost icon to be something else. I'll just delete this whole element, then add an image from file, scroll down here to add the path to the image, and let's pick this nice one of my face that I use as a Twitch emote. Copy the path by shift right clicking, and then remove the quotes in SimHub, resize that in there, save it, and boom, my face is now in Forza Motorsport. So I'm not going to dive too deeply into everything that's available here. Again, this is a very powerful tool with a lot of freedom to build what you want, but it is still limited by what Motorsport's data out can provide. So folks, thanks all for watching. I hope you found this interesting and helpful, and a huge thank you to Sappy for building this and getting it out so quickly. I hope you all have fun with Motorsport Plus.